What's going on, YouTube? Welcome back to my garage. Today we're going to be working on the 67 Mustang a little bit more. Got out the motor in and everything. We've gotten it sort of broken in. The problem right now, though, as I mentioned in an earlier video, we've got a real problem with the clutch becoming very grabby whenever you're trying to engage it. The reason for that, I believe, is because somehow oil got onto my friction disc. So basically I got to pull this entire thing back apart, put this new disc in, and hopefully that should solve our problem. What I'm thinking probably happened, this might be something to watch out for whenever you build one of these cars or put in together any motor, is the crankcase pressures on this car probably got a little bit high due to the fact that I didn't have a proper vacuum PCV valve hooked up to the engine whenever I first started it up. So during that break-in period, you've got a lot of blow-by on the engine, and that blow-by is causing crankcase pressures to rise. Normally you've got a vacuum PCV on top or some sort of filter to allow that pressure to escape. I didn't have that, so I basically had one of those little tiny filters that goes on top that looks kind of like a little miniature K&N filter or a little mini cone filter, and I'm thinking that probably got saturated with oil pretty quickly, and then that made it very difficult for the engine to properly vent. So what it did is found the path of least resistance, which in these motors is that rear main seal. So oil starts leaking through that rear main seal, gets onto the back of that flywheel, and as it's driving down the road, it gets spun up and put all over on the inside of it. As it sort of sets and everything, oil has a way of finding itself to places it shouldn't, and unfortunately it found a place it shouldn't, which was my friction disc. So today we're going to go ahead and pull this transmission out. It's a relatively simple process, especially for these T5s. I don't know if you can see, but on the interior all we did was just remove the shift boot material and then also the shifter itself, which is just 2 bolts, and then underneath we've got 2 bolts that are on the transmission cross member, and then there's just 4 bolts that go around that we'll be pulling out as well, so I'll show you that right now. Alright, so just to give you guys kind of an idea of what's going on under here, first thing I did was I pulled the drive shaft out. Now, when you normally do that, there's a bunch of fluid that'll go ahead and come out of the back of your trans, but I actually, when I was at the junkyard, and this is something you should probably think of doing if you do a lot of these or work on your car a bunch, we're going to be pulling the drive shaft, is I just went and got another yoke out of another, off another drive shaft, and I've had that in my garage forever, and it saved me quite a few times. And it's heavy enough that you can kick it around, you won't lose it, and it's not a piece of plastic that's going to break. So next thing we've got is we've got our transmission cross member right here. Basically this has got a bolt on both sides. Go ahead and take those out. Make sure you got a jack underneath it, because once you take that out, this entire thing will go ahead and drop backwards. But put a jack underneath it, take those 2 bolts out, you're good there. And then up here at the front, running over all my tools. Up here at the front, this is your bell housing. Well, this is my bell housing. And this is, you got 4 bolts that go around this. One there, one up there, and then the same on the other side. So you take those 4 bolts out, and then you've got a speedometer cable, which mine's a mechanical, so just sits right there, pulled out the side of the block. I think it's like a 10mm bolt that holds that thing in. And then you should be able to pull this entire unit, drop it down a little bit. Make sure you take off your shift boot. We've learned that in the past, so you gotta remove that first before these trans come out. Drop it down, pull it out, and then we'll have basically our flywheel and everything still in the bell housing up here. The next thing then to do will go ahead and take off the starter bolts, some bell housing bolts, get that removed, and then we can inspect what our flywheel actually looks like. So I'm kind of surprised that the underside of this car is pretty clean for a 50-year-old car. Now under here, taking off this flywheel and this pressure plate. So it's got these little bolts go all the way around it. You gotta take these things out. What I'm realizing though is a lot of the oil that came out was actually behind the that block-off plate right there. So I'm not sure that the oil is what caused this problem. It may have been the fact that I completely might have missed cleaning off this clutch or flywheel with brake cleaner before putting on my my pad, so, or my rotor clutch, whatever you want to call it. I'm working upside down, so I'm not super technical right now. And then once we get this thing off, this will be we'll be able to inspect it and see exactly what the problem is. Also, alright, so moment of truth time. Got this, try to get this one-handed. These little pins, oh my god, it's heavy. Oh, with an outstretched arm. So that looks fine. Little hot spots there. Alright, so now we got everything out, we can go ahead and see exactly what our problem is. As you can see, this clutch, which has all of maybe 150 miles on it, is nice and shiny versus the new one that we're putting in. Shiny on a clutch is actually bad. Basically, that's I'm guessing it got oil in it and stuff. There is a chance that maybe, I've got a couple of heat spots now on my pressure plate, but hopefully that's not too bad. It still seems pretty flat and everything, so I'm going to reuse it. But we're definitely gonna get a new clutch in there. This shouldn't be shiny though. It should have this matte finish. Basically, I think maybe I may have forgotten to remove the oil that is on these things whenever they're shipped. Just like brake calipers, you gotta use brake clean on them. I can't remember if I did that or not. That may have been the source of all the oil that went onto this thing. So. I'm guessing that's probably it, and then also the flywheel that's up underneath it. I may have forgotten that step within building this entire thing, but yeah, you forget one little thing and it'll eat everything up. So we're going to go ahead, put this new clutch in, get that thing all bolted up, and put it back underneath the car. Alright guys, so as you can see, we got the Mustang back down on the floor, we got the transmission put back into it. Unfortunately though, if you can see behind me, it's starting to snow again, so hopefully this weather will actually start warming up here soon enough where you can go out and play with this thing. But what I'm hoping is that the hot spots that were on that clutch plate don't provide that, or don't cause that many issues, and that this new clutch seats properly. And since I cleaned everything, brake cleaner this time, hopefully the clutch stops being so grabby. So thanks for joining. We got another update for you guys coming up this week. Something you should definitely watch out for. I did an oil change on this thing and almost blew up the motor, so more on that fall.